Another lazy cooking video from a popular YouTuber. Is this really worth eating?
My husband, who hardly shows any interest in our family, has made it a daily routine to belittle the time-saving recipes I've worked hard to come up with. One day, I was informed by an acquaintance that they saw my husband walking closely with another woman, which was not me. When I confronted him, he said,
I come home tired from work every day, and you do whatever you want. And now, you suspect me of cheating? What kind of wife are you? Do you have any proof? Haha.
That night, I pretended to clean so Johan wouldn't get suspicious, and then I snuck out of the car in the garage. The dashboard, back seat, trunk. The interior light dimly illuminated the inside of the car. Without thinking much, I pulled down the driver's side sun visor. What's this? There I found an unaddressed brown envelope tucked in. Something felt off, so I decided to take a look. Inside was a photo of an unknown woman holding a baby with a broad smile, a divorce paper, and a letter. To Johan. The letter was addressed to Johan. It's a boy. Now we can get divorced, I read. Johan's name was already filled out on the divorce paper, but not in his handwriting. Ah, I see. It's already over. Well, if you want it to end that quickly, I'll make it quick just as you wish. At that moment, my heart went cold. This was a betrayal against me and our daughter. I made my decision. I'm going to get back at him. My name is Susie Irvin. I am a cooking YouTuber and mother to my 6-year-old daughter, Rachel. Cooking has been my forte since my student days, and leveraging that talent, I launched a YouTube channel a few years ago. There, amidst the hustle and bustle of a housewife's life, I've showcased numerous easy time-saving recipes and innovative arrangements using commercial ready-made meals that can get boring. Operating the channel passionately while balancing family life, it has gained popularity over the years, and I am now cherished by many followers. This turned out nicely. I wonder if this will bring joy to many people again today. Today too, I was ready to upload a new video, fully utilizing my cooking skills. However, behind the shining facade, in front of the camera, there was something troubling me. My expression dims between the peeling dishes.
I'll be late again today.
You're always working so hard. Don't worry about home. I smile back at Johan's words, but behind that smile lies loneliness. Johan, my husband, is a manager responsible for planning and development at a home appliance manufacturer. He is dedicated to his work, highly trusted by his subordinates, and focused solely on his career. Recognized by his superiors as a rising star ever since he assumed his managerial role a few years ago, his return home has been late into the night, and he appears busy even on holidays. He's been getting home later and later these days, and sometimes he doesn't even come home at all. I wonder if he notices my forced smile. No, he couldn't possibly notice. Johan, who has paid little attention to family matters since our marriage, has never helped with household chores or childcare, leaving me to bear the burden alone. Nevertheless, I can't say I'm unhappy. Mom, when is Dad coming home? The one asking anxiously is my daughter, Rachel. Yes, I have a lovely daughter. Her presence always gives me strength. It looks like he'll be late again today. Sorry. I answer awkwardly. Rachel's expression quickly turns to one of sadness. It's understandable. She's 6 years old and still very much in her clingy phase. Just the other day, she confided in me that her friend had talked about how their dad took them to an amusement park. Is Johan and Rachel becoming more distant from each other? Feeling unbearable, I stroke Rachel's head. Your husband works late, and you get to be free, huh? I don't care if you're a YouTuber or whatever, doing whatever you like. Glancing at us sideways and barging in was my mother-in-law, Nancy. My expression tightens. Here we go again. My mother-in-law always criticized my lifestyle and blames me for everything possible. I barely manage to suppress a deep sigh. Another source of my troubles is my mother-in-law, who lives nearby. She's widowed, living alone now. Nancy has never shown any understanding for the profession of YouTuber, looking down on my job. So much for your time-saving recipes. They're just shortcuts, aren't they? I hear this all the time, but the criticism hurts all the more because I'm passionate about my beloved cooking. Yet, despite her criticisms, Nancy, wanting to save on food expenses, comes over to eat the meals I prepare, even though she wasn't invited. Basically, your marriage has never been right. You can't even produce a proper heir. What use are you? A girl will just end up marrying and she won't be able to continue the family line. Johan got the short end of the stick by marrying someone like you. My mother-in-law in her 60s stubbornly clings to old-fashioned beliefs that a male child should carry on the family legacy, treating Rachel coldly. Even the pure smile of her granddaughter means nothing to her. I have to be strong. I'm a mother after all. That's how I always get through it.
I'm home.
Welcome back. Late at night, Johan finally came home. The few times my husband comes home, he does nothing but ridicule the time-saving recipes I've made.
Another lazy cooking video from a popular YouTuber, huh? Is this really worth eating?
Every time we talk about cooking, my husband leaves deep wounds in my heart.
I'll be going to my mother's place tonight.
Again? It seems my husband plans to stay over at his mother's house again. His coming home has become a rare occurrence.
Can't be helped. Since Dad passed away, Mom has been alone. What if something happens to her? I'm not going because I want to. Don't you understand a son's duties? Well, it can't be helped. We only have a daughter. And you're going to make another one of your quick meals tomorrow, right?
Even when he does come home, he shows little interest in our family and mostly belittles the time-saving recipes I've put so much effort into. I understand what Johan is saying. As an only son, he's probably trying to take the place of my father-in-law, who passed away early. However, the frequency of his stays at his mother's house has been increasing. Is it really necessary to take care of his mother so frequently? Or is there another reason? I couldn't help but think deeper about the reason. One day, when I went shopping in the neighborhood, I ran into someone.
Oh, Mrs. Irvin.
Hello, Mrs. Abbott. Lovely weather, isn't it? She's a neighbor of my mother-in-law and gets along well with her.
I had tea with your mother-in-law the other day.
Oh, is that so?
Actually, I shouldn't speak too loudly about this, but I saw your husband Johan walking with a woman the other day.
What?
And they went into your mother-in-law's house together. Do you know her? She was someone I didn't recognize, so I thought it was unusual.
Is that so? Maybe someone from work or someone related to caregiving, perhaps?
Right, sorry, don't mind me.
I hurried away, my heart pounding and my voice quivering, trying desperately to hide it. Who is she? What's going on? My heart was in turmoil, a mix of disbelief and a sensation of foreboding intertwined, leaving me unsure what to believe. The restlessness lingered even after I returned home. Seeing me unlike myself, Rachel looked at me anxiously and asked, "Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "Oh no, I'm fine. Just a bit tired. Now let's get you to bed early so you're not late for school tomorrow." I couldn't stand it any longer. I wanted to know the truth for myself. Seeing Rachel only strengthened my determination. I'll ask my mother-in-law tomorrow and find out, for Rachel's sake. The next morning, after seeing Rachel off to school, I drove to my mother-in-law's house. My heart was racing, and my hands were sweaty. Upon arriving, I took a deep breath before getting out of the car. My hand trembled as I rang the doorbell. When my mother-in-law opened the door, she looked at me with a complex expression. "What brings you here so early?" Mother-in-law, I'm sorry for the sudden visit. There's something I wanted to ask. I lacked the courage to ask directly, but finally brought up the sighting of my husband with an unknown woman. My mother-in-law's response was unexpected. That. Actually. While hesitating, she began to explain the truth. My husband had been struggling with work stress, and knowing this, my mother-in-law became worried. She knew a friend's daughter, Julia, who is a counselor, and introduced her to my husband. I think you understand, Susie. Johan is going through a lot. He has many worries you might not be aware of. He's a rising star at work, and this is a critical time for him. That's why it's best to leave these matters to professionals.
However, I still had doubts about the truth of their relationship. I couldn't just take my mother-in-law's word for it and decided I needed to talk directly with my husband. On the drive home, I deeply contemplated what I should do next and what lies ahead for our family. One thing was clear. I couldn't just do nothing. Through a conversation with my husband, I had to uncover the truth and consider our family's future. That was the only path left for me. The next night, when my husband returned home, I brought up the subject to confirm the truth. Someone from your mother's neighborhood mentioned they saw you walking with a woman who isn't me. They said she was introduced by your mother. What's all this about?
You're talking about that? Yeah, that's right. I'm exhausted from work and all you do is whatever you want. When I come home, all I see are your so-called time-saving meals, which are nothing but shortcuts. I've been consulting her about my frustrations with this lifestyle. She's a counselor, a specialist in her field. She understands the pressures of my job, and I've been seeing her for a while now.
He admitted to her existence without any hint of remorse.
You, who just do whatever you like, wouldn't understand.
With that, he quickly retreated to his study. A few days later, I received a call from Rachel's tutoring school. They couldn't confirm the payment for this month's tuition. It was supposed to be automatically debited, but the payment hadn't gone through, and they asked me to check. What's going on? There should be about $80,000 in that account. It doesn't make sense for the payment to fail. I hurriedly grabbed my card to check my account. Confused and anxious, I checked the bank account balance and was shocked at what I saw. What is this? The $80,000 we had painstakingly saved up was completely gone. This money was critically important, saved over the years since our marriage for Rachel's education and our retirement. I immediately called Johan to find out what happened. The tutoring school called saying Rachel's tuition hasn't been paid. When I checked the bank balance, the $80,000 that was in here is gone. What happened? Did you use it for something?
Yeah, I used it. For counseling fees. Seeing a specialist is expensive. It can't be helped. I often had to ask the counselor to adjust her schedule for clinic closures or after my overtime. It's a hassle, so I couldn't just go empty-handed.
I was dumbfounded by how the money was spent. He said the $80,000 went towards counseling fees, expensive dinners, and brand-name gifts. How could you? I can't believe this.
Blame it on whatever you want. It's all your fault.
As I tried to say something, he hung up the phone abruptly. It was clear that their relationship wasn't merely that of a counselor and client. That night, determined to find evidence of infidelity, I decided to search his car. Right, the car got all sandy when I took Rachel to the park last time. I'll clean it up. I pretended to clean so Johan wouldn't get suspicious. Then, I snuck off to the car in the garage. I checked the dashboard, backseat, trunk. The dim-lit interior light illuminating the inside. Casually, I pulled down the driver's side sun visor. What's this? There, tucked away, was an unaddressed brown envelope. I got this weird feeling of unease. I hesitantly looked inside. Inside were a photo of an unknown woman holding a baby with a broad smile, a divorce paper, and a letter. To Johan. The letter was addressed to Johan. A boy is born. Now we can get divorced, I read. Johan's name was already filled out on the divorce paper, but not in his handwriting. Ah, so that's how it is. It was over long ago. If you wish to end it that quickly, I'll make it quick, just as you wished. In that moment, my heart went cold. This was a betrayal against me and my daughter. I made a decision. I'm going to get back at him. One day, my husband casually mentioned,
I'm going to my mother's place today.
Okay. Thinking it was likely another visit to his affair partner, I felt no loneliness. This is it, the only chance. After confirming my husband had left, I packed up our belongings, and Rachel and I left the house. Soon after, I submitted the divorce papers that were in the envelope. This won't be the end of it. I took further steps. It was necessary to settle things properly.
I secretly commissioned an investigation for property division claims. There was no worry about not finding anything, as I knew he was guilty. Soon the results came back, revealing the affair. On the days Johan claimed to be staying at his mother's, he was actually dining out with a woman from the photo, entering an apartment building 2 stations away and not coming out until the morning. Just as I thought. I wasn't surprised. Through a lawyer, I demanded child support, a property division, and the return of the $80,000 which he had spent. Immediately, I received a call from Johan.
What the hell are you doing? How dare you act on your own? Don't mess with me.
You were the one who betrayed us first. That money was for Rachel, your daughter. You're her parent, after all. It's only fair.
Don't think you can get away with this. I never wanted a daughter from the start. Just like you always cooking, I was sick of it. I'm better off without you. If paying that petty cash cut ties with you, I'll pay it all.
Johan ranted over the phone, sounding desperate. He's keeping his word and paying for the division of property, child expenses, and schooling all in one go. The promised amount was deposited into my account later.
Hey, I've paid the promised money. Are you satisfied now?
Johan contacted me.
Julia, unlike some YouTuber like you, cooks lavish meals every day, not those lazy ones. And Mom is happy, saying it's good that a competent wife came along. I'm relieved to be rid of you. I should have divorced you sooner.
With the divorce, a weight was lifted off my shoulders. No more snide remarks from my mother-in-law, and no more worrying about Johan, who barely came home. Most importantly, Rachel wouldn't have to suffer anymore. From then on, Rachel and I led a peaceful life. However, 3 months later, my ex-husband suddenly summoned me to my former in-laws' house. Entering the familiar living room, I saw Julia holding a baby, my mother-in-law, and Johan. Suddenly, Johan started to shout.
Hey, cut it out, will you? We've already cut ties, yet you're still harassing us?
What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're saying.
Don't play dumb. Ever since we divorced, every project I've worked on has fallen through. The home appliances I developed aren't selling at all. I've been demoted because of this responsibility. I've even been ordered to transfer to Alaska. When I asked my boss what was going on, he told me to ask you. What are you planning? Do you hate seeing people happy that much? You're trying to ruin us, aren't you?
Stop making accusations. I know nothing about it.
You can deny it all you want. I'll sue you for defamation. Get ready for a huge compensation claim.
What are you talking about? Fine, do what you want. I laughed it off. Until now, in my time-saving cooking videos, I had actively used and promoted the appliances Johan had planned and developed. The promotional effect of those videos was the reason Johan's appliances sold well. However, after the divorce, I saw no reason to continue using or promoting them, and decisively stopped.
Mrs. Irvin, we hope you'll agree to another tie-up with our product.
I'm sorry, but I am no longer Mrs. Irvin. My husband cheated on me, and he even had a child with his mistress. We have divorced, so I will no longer be associated with your products. They remind me of my husband, so please refrain from contacting me in the future.
Please don't say that. It would be a huge loss for our company. Could you possibly reconsider your decision? We'll do anything, please.
Following this, the company demoted Johan to remove him from his current role. Indeed, the company had realized that the increase in sales was not due to Johan's abilities, but had instead chosen me over my incompetent husband. After I shared the whole story of my interactions with Johan's company, Johan was completely disheartened. He wasn't as loud and confident as before, and he looked surprised and couldn't come up with a reply. Oh yes, I heard something interesting lately. It was about Julia, right? She seems to be going to the department store's food hall every day. A friend of mine works there. Apparently, she's been buying up ready-made dishes. What's for dinner tonight? Which store's dish did you go for? I'm sure your mother-in-law is thrilled with those luxurious ready-made meals.
What? What do you mean, Julia?
Hold on a minute, Julia. Explain yourself. Were you deceiving me?
What? I mean, you said you'd spoil me, Johan. That you'd do anything for me. That's why I agreed to be with you, liar. Hey, Mom. It was you who said Susie was no good, and we should go for Julia. You were all happy about Julia's meals, praising how delicious they were. Coming over every night for a free meal because you're too cheap to spend on your own food. and now you're trying to act all innocent.
It's not even homemade, it's all store-bought. It was a complete disaster. I no longer wanted anything to do with such despicable people. With that thought, I quickly left my former in-laws' house. I wish you all happiness. 5 years passed, and I was approached once again by the appliance company my ex-husband used to work for, asking for a collaboration. My heart wavered. Maybe I should just say no. The thought of possibly having to deal with Johan again made me hesitant. Then I was told,
Mr. Irvin has resigned from the company. It seems his health hasn't been very good.
What? Johan has stayed with Julia, who never attempted to cook, and they continued to eat only ready-made or department store meals. Without considering nutrition, they consumed meals high in salt, sugar, and fat, leading to accumulating stress and a disordered lifestyle. As a result, Johan ended up gaining 66 pounds, dealing with some health problems and not being able to work like before. Knowing Johan was no longer there, I decided to accept the collaboration. Mom, what's for dinner? I'll help. Thank you, Rachel. How about a potato gratin, your favorite? Yay! Mom, tie my apron, please. You've gotten really good with a knife. Of course, I'm the daughter of a popular cooking YouTuber, right? I'm going to be a YouTuber and stream cooking when I grow up. My next goal is to come up with some easy, healthy recipes that kids can make too. I want to help out all those busy moms out there. Yes, that's right. My next stream will be a collaboration with Rachel.
I dumped you because you only make $10,000 a year. Poor people deserve to be thrown away. What on earth is the ex-husband misunderstanding? Huh? That's just the monthly rent, though? My name is Tiffany. I am a 48-year-old housewife. I've been married to Peter for a year. Actually, I am divorced once before. I experienced divorce at the age of 45. The man I was married to back then was really terrible. He was easily emotional and blamed me for everything. He even blamed me for his lack of promotion. And after 15 years of marriage, he suddenly demanded a divorce. I was working at the time, and we didn't have children, so I thought it was okay to divorce. Or rather, my affection for my husband, who suddenly wanted to divorce after so many years together, cooled off all at once. But the divorce was complicated. It was about the division of assets. My ex-husband claimed the house we bought together was his alone. Since the house was in both of our names, if he wanted to continue living there, he needed to pay me half its value in cash. When I insisted on this, my ex-husband got even angrier. After all, I was supporting your life, why should you get even more money? The ex-husband was angry and refused to pay any money. In the end, we had to force him to pay through a lawyer, but if I had backed down, he probably would have gotten away with it. That's how much I needed to push my ex-husband to the edge to get anything from him. And when we separated, he insulted me like this. You money grubber. Don't leech off others when you can't even earn for yourself. I didn't understand what my ex-husband wanted to say, but I could tell he just wanted to insult me. I tried to ignore him, but after the divorce was finalized, he kept sending me emails, insulting me. Do you enjoy squeezing money out of me? You're just a washed-up old hag who'll be alone for the rest of her life. I'll find a new wife right away. Unlike you, I have financial power. That's the kind of emails my ex-husband sent me in large quantities. Even if I classified them as spam, he kept sending them. So I ended up reading them whenever I checked. I was disgusted with myself for spending 15 years of my life married to such a petty man. I thought I had wasted so much of my life. Then, I changed my email address and the registration address for the services I had been using. Thanks to that, I no longer received harassing emails from my ex-husband. Now I can finally start a new life, I thought. And threw myself into work to forget about my ex-husband. I couldn't stand being looked down on by my ex-husband. So I turned my anger into motivation and worked hard. I was originally good with computers and worked as a web engineer at a company. Since working more at the company didn't significantly increase my salary, I started working as a self-employed web engineer as well. At first, I could only take on simple or low-paying jobs. But as my track record and skills were recognized, I started to receive more and more work. I had no days off, but I kept working hard because I wanted to prove my ex-husband wrong. I thought I couldn't stop this lifestyle until I was satisfied to a certain degree. So I worked as long as my body allowed me to. After about a year of living like this, I significantly increased my income. However, it seems I was working beyond my limits. One day, I felt dizzy and almost passed out. When I realized this was bad, I collapsed on the side of the road. Fortunately, it seems someone called an ambulance, and I was taken to the hospital for treatment. When I woke up, I saw my mother and father looking at me with worry. "Tiffany, you've woken up." "Mom." "Dad, we were worried when we heard you suddenly collapsed. We thought you hadn't come home because you were busy. But then we got a call from the hospital. I thought my heart would stop. I'm sorry. I'm just glad you're okay. It's good that you didn't collapse at home." "Yeah." The doctor said it was due to overwork. "Is your job that demanding? If it's too much, we can complain to your company." "No, it's not that. I've actually been moonlighting. And I've been working without any breaks. No wonder you've made yourself sick. You need to take better care of yourself." "You're right, I'm sorry." After being scolded by my parents, I reflected on my actions. And then I was admitted for tests and observation for a couple of days. That's when I found out that my attending physician was Peter. "How are you feeling?" "Oh, I'm okay." "That's good to hear. You'll be able to go home soon. But please, don't overdo it." "Yes." "I'm sorry. Is there a reason you feel you have to overdo it?" "What?" "Oh, no, it just seems like my warnings go in one ear and out the other." "You're not planning to dive back into work as soon as you're discharged, are you?" Well, that reaction says it all, doesn't it? Your parents also mentioned that if you had collapsed at home, it might have been too late when you were found. So as a doctor, I can't just watch you overwork yourself. Okay. Would you like to talk about what's been burdening you? After he said that, all the emotions I had been holding back came flooding out. I couldn't stop crying. I spilled everything to him, the terrible things my ex-husband had said. How after 15 years of marriage, it had come to this, how miserable I felt. And how everything inside me was a mess. That must have been very hard for you. He just listened quietly and then spoke kindly to me. You should do what you feel you need to, for as long as you need. But please, come in regularly for checkups. I have a duty to ensure my patient's health isn't compromised by overworking. Understood. I promised him that and was discharged. I continued with my main job and my side job, but I didn't work as excessively as before. I didn't want to worry him. However, I wanted to see him, so I visited the hospital about twice a month. Each time, he listened to me with a smile and kindness, making me feel as if I were attending a counseling session. Talking to him always made my heart feel relaxed. Gradually, I could feel the wounds in my heart, inflicted by my ex-husband, beginning to heal. During consultations, he would also share personal stories about himself. He too had been married once, and his wife had passed away from an illness a few years ago. He was the type to work hard beyond his limits, which led to a serious illness. That's why he couldn't leave me alone. I was really down at the time. thinking what kind of doctor am I if I couldn't even save my own wife? So, I made a resolution that I absolutely want to save everyone I come in contact with. I see. I felt admiration for his words and beliefs. Though he was 2 years younger than me, being a doctor with a high income in his mid-40s. You'd think he'd be more interested in playing around with women or buying expensive things rather than having such passionate beliefs. As if he were a young doctor just starting out. I was drawn to him. After starting to visit the hospital, I invited him out to dinner one day, thinking that our relationship wouldn't progress from patient and doctor unless I made a move. I was incredibly nervous, but he happily accepted my dinner invitation. It was our first time meeting privately, and we had a wonderful time. He was very interesting to talk to, and being of the same generation, we had a lot in common. After that, he started inviting me out for meals and dates. And so, we began dating. I was happy to learn that love could start at any age. My time with him was truly joyful. I was happy just being with him. My parents were surprised, but very pleased to hear I had started dating the doctor from that time. I'm looking forward to hearing wedding news. No, it's too early to tell anything like that. My mother's sudden remark made me respond shyly. But I thought it would be wonderful if I could marry him. As our relationship continued for about a year, he proposed to me. I believe our meeting was fate. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Yes. Please take care of me. I was overjoyed to be proposed to. He became the person I loved the most out of anyone I had ever dated. I was happy to be getting married to such a person. It was great to be able to remarry at this age. My parents were very relieved. His parents were also very kind and good people, and they blessed our marriage. As a married couple, our life together was truly joyful and happy. I continued my freelance work but decided to quit my main job to focus on household duties, not wanting to worry my husband. Besides, I wanted to spend more time with my husband. And there was no financial worry, so there was no need to work so hard. I no longer felt the need to prove anything to my ex-husband. We were enjoying our happy days together. However, an unexpected event occurred. I encountered my ex-husband. This happened while I was waiting for my husband at the hospital where he worked, planning to go on a date. The clinic closed at 2 p.m. that day. So I was waiting in the waiting room for my husband's work to end. The hospital where my husband worked was a large university hospital. So sitting among the patients did not cause any inconvenience. The reception staff already knew about my relationship with my husband, so they didn't mind me waiting. I was reading my favorite novel while waiting for him when suddenly someone called out to me. Huh? Tiffany, isn't it? I looked up at the sound of my name, and there was my ex-husband, Eric. Eric. What unfortunate luck to encounter my ex-husband here. And beside him stood a young woman in her 20s. They were arm in arm, but they didn't seem well matched at all. It looked more like a middle-aged man flaunting his wealth with a young hostess. You still have that unlucky look, huh? You still have that annoying face, I see. I never wanted to meet my ex-husband again, but since we had run into each other, I thought I might as well provoke him as much as possible. Huh? Who do you think you are? Don't get cocky just because I dumped you. He glared at me with a look of utter disdain. I dumped you because you were making just $10,000 a year. I bet you're still living a poor life on a yearly salary of $10,000, right? And now you have to come to a hospital like this? How pathetic. Your life is over. Unlike you, I've got myself a cute girlfriend, and I'm living happy days. He put his hand around the waist of the woman beside him. Poor people deserve to be dumped, right? The woman with him seemed utterly convinced she had bested me. basking in a sense of superiority. What on earth is my ex-husband misunderstanding? I'm earning far more now than he ever did. Huh? That's just my monthly rent, you know? What? My ex-husband's eyes widened at my comment. But he quickly smirked and insulted me again. Nah, that's gotta be a lie. If you're going to lie, at least make it a believable one. That's just too sad. The woman laughed along with my ex-husband. Birds of a feather flock together, it seems. It's fine if you don't believe me. As I said this, the woman next to my ex-husband pointed at my necklace, looking surprised. Wait, isn't that a super expensive necklace? Oh, you noticed? Well spotted. I took the necklace in hand to show it more clearly to the woman. Wow. It's real. Is it really that expensive? He asked the woman with a skeptical look. The woman excitedly said, "This is worth at least $20,000. What, $20,000? How come you have something so expensive? I make quite a lot as a self-employed engineer. That's why I can afford to live in a place with a rent of $10,000 a month." What? But you, who used to make just $10,000 a year. You know, when we were married, you wanted me to limit my income to qualify for spousal deduction. I could have worked more. But you insisted I not neglect my duties as a housewife, forcibly limiting me. What? No way, he's that kind of man? Domineering much? The woman quickly distanced herself from my ex-husband's side. I saw this as an opportunity and shared a particular episode about my ex-husband with her. Domineering would be putting it mildly, he's a moral harasser. He would say things like, "I'm feeding you, I'm supporting you," in front of his entire family. And his mother would join in on the harassment. Ugh, that's the worst. I wouldn't want to be with someone like that. Besides, to limit your own ability to work and then dump you for being poor is psychopathic. That's really a no-go. The woman threw harsh words at my ex-husband. Her momentum was impressive. My ex-husband shrank more and more, looking dejected. It seems like I can't be happy with you, so let's break up. What? After saying that, the woman left the hospital on her own. Hey, this is your fault. Huh? It's clearly your responsibility. I just warned her so we wouldn't have a second victim. Besides, you're the one who started talking to me. It's all your own doing. Shut up. You flaunting your wealth, there's got to be some trick to it, like winning the lottery. You're still inferior to me. He shouted that. This is a hospital, keep it down. Even though I told him to be quiet, my ex-husband wouldn't listen. Don't tell me what to do. But as soon as my ex-husband said that, my husband appeared. I'm sorry, but this is a hospital. Could you please keep it down? My ex-husband was taken aback when addressed by the doctor. Oh. Sorry, doctor. But, you see, I got involved in a little trouble. Trouble, you say? Yeah. This woman started bothering me. Really, some women. My ex-husband tried to shift the blame of the commotion onto me. Some woman, you say? Indeed, she can be overly dedicated to her work. Has exceptional abilities, but sometimes misses the obvious. And is quite the unique woman, isn't she? What? My ex-husband was surprised to hear the doctor start talking like that. You seem to know a lot about her. Well, she is my beloved wife. What? Wife. She was waiting for me to finish work. Then, the receptionist told me my wife was being bothered by a strange man. And who might you be? Do you have any business with my precious wife? No, I was just... Peter, this is my ex-husband. The moral harasser. Even after divorce, you tried to continue your harassment towards your ex-wife? You're quite persistent. I was just... It seemed that at this point, my ex-husband finally realized that the eyes of everyone in the waiting room were focused on him. What? I haven't done anything. If that's the case, could you please leave promptly? And never appear in front of my wife again. I just happened to see her. Shall we call the police? No, please. I'll leave. Saying that, my ex-husband hurriedly left the hospital. His departure was so uncool that I felt a great sense of relief. It was good to let him know, in no uncertain terms, that I was much happier. But all of that didn't matter to me anymore. Being able to spend time with my current husband was the greatest happiness of all. I was also glad and impressed that my husband had chased my ex-husband away from me. Later on, I heard about my ex-husband from a mutual friend. Apparently, he had racked up a significant amount of debt trying to support the hostess who was with him. And after she left him, he was stuck with a huge debt. As a result, he is now a divorced, debt-ridden man in his late 40s, a rather pitiful status. Well, it's really just desserts and truly serves him right. On the other hand, I continue to spend happy days with my husband, who cherishes me the most. I look forward to creating many more joyful memories with my husband in the future.
I hung it at the entrance. Take care of it for a week. Huh? Take care of what? My usually self-centered sister-in-law suddenly called me out of the blue. She said she left her baby in a reusable bag at our doorstep. But we moved yesterday? As soon as she heard my reply, my sister-in-law started yelling. I'm overseas. Find him right away. I hurriedly drove to the house we used to live in, but the baby was nowhere to be found. I thought, I have to call the police. With trembling hands, I took out my phone, little knowing the horrifying truth that awaited me. 10 years ago, I married my husband Ben and we lived together. We wanted children, but it didn't happen, and before we knew it, I was 38. Taking advantage of me was my sister-in-law, Tiffany, 5 years my junior. Her husband was a CEO, and my husband worked for his company. Using his position, Tiffany, who lived just a 10-minute drive away, often asked me to do her shopping, and after she got pregnant, she called me over more often, even making me clean the house and cook dinner. Even though I'm someone who enjoys taking care of others, I finally told my husband that it was too much. But he just said, I'll talk to her eventually. Sorry, but could you keep helping out for a while? He's probably being used by Tiffany's husband, so he must be in a tough spot. Thinking this, whenever Tiffany called, I reluctantly went to her house. Ugh, my stomach is heavy. Hey, Wendy. Stop daydreaming and get me the TV remote. Huh? What's with you? My sister-in-law was only 3.5 months pregnant. Yet, it felt like her stomach was already big. But since she was originally on the plump side, I didn't say anything extra. For an easier delivery, maybe you should move around a bit? You've never been pregnant, so don't give me advice. Ah, just as I expected. This child is our family's heir. What's wrong with taking care of him? She lounged on the sofa, maintaining her arrogant attitude, and I gradually became more stressed and worn out. But when I questioned if the gender could be determined at 3.5 months, she got angry like a lit fuse. Your brain must be ancient. With modern technology, gender can be determined quickly. I didn't feel like arguing with her insistence on the obvious, so I just listened to her complaints with exasperation. You're just jealous because you can't get pregnant. Seriously bad for prenatal education. If anything happens to this child, it's your fault. Finally, she began to threaten me using her unborn child as a shield. Being around her felt suffocating, and I quickly finished my errands, sighing as I returned home. When I told my husband about it after work, he just said, "Just a little more patience." So, with a heavy heart, I continued to endure it. It was painful to carry such feelings, so whenever Tiffany called, I made excuses and declined. However, Tiffany complained to my husband that I was being mean to her, leaving him at his wit's end. Despite saying I had things to do, she wouldn't listen and kept calling me multiple times. Helpless, when I finally answered the phone, she let out a piercing voice that grated on my ears. "Wendy, do you not care if my husband's position at work gets worse? You haven't forgotten that my husband is the CEO, have you?" My husband, usually gentle and kind. With the sole intention of not causing him trouble, I had no choice but to go to Tiffany's place. And as time passed, Tiffany gave birth to a boy a month earlier than expected. Furthermore, the baby weighed over 140 ounces. I thought, despite being born early, isn't he too big? I wondered, but since I had never experienced pregnancy, I accepted that it might just be how things are. Tiffany named the child Sean and, as expected, called me as soon as she was discharged from the hospital, asking me to take care of the baby. Think of it as practice for childcare and fulfill your role as a wet nurse properly. You never know if you'll be blessed with one yourself, huh? I was annoyed by my sister-in-law's attitude, but considering how difficult things must be right after giving birth, I visited her every time she called. Plus, the baby was just so adorable. "Sean, you're such a good boy. Grow up healthy, okay?" Even tasks like changing diapers and giving baths for the first time didn't feel like a burden when I looked at the child's face. However, when 3 months passed, my sister-in-law started dropping the baby off at my house. "What's going on? You're all dressed up. My husband has a business dinner with some important people. I have to accompany him. So, I'm leaving Sean with you, the wet nurse." Although I thought it must be tough for the CEO's wife, who was now energetic again, to have so much to do, I diligently took care of the baby. But after that, Tiffany started bringing Sean over more and more frequently. "Counting on you again today. Isn't this getting a bit too much? You're not accompanying your husband again, are you?" "My husband is dealing with important negotiations right now, and I'm helping him. You should cooperate too." With an aggressive tone, my sister-in-law forced the baby onto me and hastily left. I thought, is wearing such a frilly dress really practical? Despite my doubts, I couldn't just leave the baby in front of me, so I attended to his needs. However, on that particular day, when I changed his diaper, I discovered that Sean had diarrhea. He didn't have a fever and seemed lively, so I warmed up the room more than usual and monitored him closely. In the evening, when Tiffany came to pick him up and I informed her about it, she aggressively confronted me. "You useless piece of... Did you feed him something to make him sick out of spite?" When I shook my head, denying any wrongdoing, my husband returned home. "What's all the commotion at the door?" "Big bro. I entrusted Sean to sis-in-law because I trust her. But she made him sick." Her voice, usually rough when berating me, now sounded meek, and she started crying. I understand where Tiffany's coming from. Wendy has no experience in childcare. It was a bit cold today, so maybe he caught a chill. I'll apologize, so please forgive her. My husband stood up for me, but without having done anything wrong, I didn't see the point in apologizing. With a sense of frustration, I watched Tiffany and Sean leave. Feeling dejected, as I started preparing dinner, my husband suddenly put on a serious expression and took out an A4-sized envelope from his bag. "Wendy, there's something important I need to tell you. Forget about dinner for now and have a seat." Presented with the documents spread out on the table and the words my husband uttered, I couldn't immediately believe it. Moreover, it was something I hadn't even imagined, so I was taken aback. However, seeing my husband's unwavering determination, I quietly nodded. A week later, as I was unpacking and tidying up cardboard boxes, my sister-in-law called me. "I left him hanging on your house's doorknob, so take care of him for a week." "Huh? Take care of what? Don't play dumb. It's obviously our kid. You've already taken him inside, right? Upon closer inspection, I realized that since I wasn't home, she had put the baby in the reusable bag I had and hung it on the doorknob. Hearing this, I was shocked and flustered. Wait a minute. We moved yesterday, so we're not going back to that house. Please go pick up Sean right away. However, my sister-in-law responded with, "Huh? You're lying again, aren't you?" And didn't believe what I was saying. But when I responded with a serious tone, insisting it was true, she suddenly panicked. Turns out, she had left Sean behind 5 hours ago. And to my surprise, I learned she was currently traveling abroad. It was still chilly despite being spring, and the temperature hadn't risen much that day. Go pick up Sean right now. Hurry. More concerned about the baby than infuriated by my sister-in-law's attitude, I immediately drove off. An hour later, I arrived at our old house and checked the doorstep, but there was no sign of Sean. I thought. And no reusable bag. Why? I searched the yard thoroughly and asked neighbors, but everyone just said, "I don't know." I thought. How come there were no cries either? Feeling like there was no use continuing the search, I thought of calling the police, and I grabbed my phone. That's when I received a call from someone. What? What do you mean? Listening to the shocking content, I was speechless. After the call ended, unable to process my thoughts, I walked around in a daze until my sister-in-law called. He was in the reusable bag hanging on your doorstep, right? About that, he's nowhere to be found. Seriously. This is bad. If we don't find Sean, my husband will divorce me, and it'll be your fault. Even over the phone, I could sense Tiffany's panic. Unable to continue like this, I decided to inform her that I would report it to the police and have them search. But she adamantly refused. If you do that, it'll become a big deal, and my husband will find out. Isn't Sean more important than your image? Sean is just a tool for extracting money from my husband. Hearing those words, I was stunned by her selfishness. Ignoring my presence, I heard her talking to someone else. After a while, Tiffany said something even more unbelievable. My flight for today got cancelled, but I'll return tomorrow. Don't let my husband find out. If you find Sean, let me know immediately. I'll do what I can. After hearing my response, Tiffany seemed satisfied and hung up. The next day, as I waited at the airport, Tiffany appeared arm in arm with a man. Upon seeing me, she approached with a displeased expression. "Wendy. What are you doing here? Did you find Sean? I came to tell you something important. Sean is gone, out of your reach. It's too late." With a downcast, sorrowful expression, I delivered the news, and Tiffany began to fluster. "That's a lie. What am I supposed to tell my husband? You useless. Find another baby that looks similar and bring it here. How could you say that? Aren't you still a mother?" Suggesting that we find another baby of similar age to pass off as Sean to her husband, Tiffany's selfishness enraged me. Filled with anger and sadness, I couldn't help but shed tears. But as I wiped away the tears from my cheeks, I firmly met her gaze. Instead of searching for a look-alike, talk to this person. As I said that, a woman hiding behind me, her hood pulled low, finally revealed her face. And not just Tiffany, but also the man beside her, trembled visibly. Yes, she was the wife of Tiffany's cheating partner. Too shocked to move, the man was then berated by his wife, who exclaimed, "You scum! I'll beat some sense into you." And without hesitation, she delivered a resounding slap to him, right then and there. The force was so intense that passers-by stopped in their tracks. Cradling her husband as he slumped to the ground, she turned her gaze toward Tiffany. Then, Tiffany quickly paled and started speaking rapidly. Excuse me. Please don't get the wrong idea. We're not in that kind of relationship." "Huh? Hold on, Wendy. Stop recording with your phone. Despite trying to cover it up, my sister-in-law flipped out on me for having my phone up, seemingly to capture the scene. But I remained calm. So, how do you explain this? From the envelope I had brought, I pulled out emails between my sister-in-law and her affair partner, as well as cozy photos I found on social media. Tiffany forcibly snatched them from me and glared at me. Snooping around like that is despicable. How did you even find this guy's wife's contact? I happen to know his wife. She's someone I've met before. Huh? When I saw my sister-in-law's affair partner on social media, I recognized him as the husband of the woman who does my hair at the salon. Though he was also a hairstylist, his wife owned multiple salons and was skilled and successful. In contrast, I heard that her husband didn't work and just wandered around aimlessly, earning him the title of idle hairstylist. When I went to inform his wife about Tiffany's affair trip, she said, "I've had enough. I'm joining in too." And came along. Though she usually had a gentle and kind demeanor, I was honestly surprised at how scary she could be when angry. Facing the philandering idle hairstylist, his wife, rubbing their hands together like a fly, continuously begged, "Please don't divorce me." Meanwhile, I sensed her strong determination as she steadfastly shook her head. "And Sean turns out to be a child from infidelity, huh? Huh? You're just saying random things with no evidence. But being born a month early and weighing over 140 ounces is quite large, isn't it? And you're probably hiding the actual number of weeks, right?" As I said this, I presented documents from another envelope, a maternity record book and proof that Tiffany's husband and Sean weren't related. "You're playing dirty tricks. But if I tear these up, it'll be as if nothing happened." Tiffany snatched the DNA test results from me and tore them up on the spot, looking smug. She probably thought she could get away with it, but it wouldn't be that easy. It's better to talk directly with the person who gave me these documents. When I turned my phone screen toward Tiffany, her eyes and mouth widened so much it looked like she was about to scream. And for good reason. On the screen was Tiffany's husband. I hadn't been recording, I had been video calling with Tiffany's husband the whole time. "Tiffany, you lied about going to your parents' house, and you dared deceive me like this." Well. I mean, Repeating words that made no sense at all, my sister-in-law stumbled. Standing before her, I spoke slowly. "Listen carefully, because I'm going to explain everything step by step. A week ago, Tiffany's husband, after finding emails between Tiffany and her affair partner, had suspicions and decided to get a DNA test for Sean. At the same time, he lied to Tiffany about going on a week-long business trip. Then Tiffany, upon receiving the email from her affair partner, immediately booked a trip online. In her excitement, she didn't even think about erasing her browsing history. On the day of the trip, Tiffany put Sean in a reusable bag, hung it on the doorstep of the house where I used to live, and happily skipped off to the train station. Your husband, who was following you, ended up rescuing Sean. If he hadn't, who knows what would have happened after being left on the doorstep for over 5 hours. Huh? So, Sean is alive? Yeah, he's with me right now. When I couldn't find Sean and was about to call the police, Tiffany's husband called me instead. Shocked but eager to learn more details, I immediately went to his house. Sean was playing energetically, waving his arms and legs while holding a rattle. As I listened to the situation, I remembered that despite being born a month early, he weighed over 140 ounces. I reluctantly accepted it at the time, but I still found it odd. With Tiffany's husband's permission, I searched through her belongings and found the maternity record book. Upon examining its contents, I discovered that my sister-in-law had falsified the baby's gestational age. Why would Tiffany do such a thing? Upon tracing back the timing of her actual pregnancy, it coincided with the period when my sister-in-law's husband was on a long business trip, away for about 2 months. In other words, it was an impossible situation for the baby's father to be her husband. Realizing she was pregnant with her affair partner's child, Tiffany likely thought she could pass it off with just a 1-month discrepancy. However, the unexpected birth of a big baby revealed her deception, leading to suspicion from me. At this point, the affair partner, whose child's existence was now exposed, began apologizing to his wife, prostrating himself on the floor and banging his head. However, his wife coldly said, "From now on, you'll live on your own," and slammed the divorce papers on the table. As she kicked away the begging adulterer and walked away, her determined stride radiated confidence. On the other hand, my sister-in-law's husband wasn't staying silent either. "Of course, we're getting divorced. Go be with that man over there." "No way. I only liked his face. He's broke anyway. Are you with me just for money?" Hit with a nerve, my sister-in-law faltered in her response. "You said Sean was just a tool to extract money from your husband. Stop talking nonsense. I heard yesterday's phone call from Wendy. To ensure my sister-in-law couldn't wriggle out of this, I recorded our conversation for evidence." While we were talking, Tiffany's husband, who had been silently listening, turned red with deep furrows in his forehead. Upon learning the shocking truth, my sister-in-law seemed to tremble slightly. However, after a moment, she remembered something and peered into her phone screen. If Sean had been fine, everything would have been okay, right? Besides, even though we're not biologically related, I gave birth to him, so he's practically your child too. With such a feeble and selfish argument, both Tiffany's husband and I involuntarily exclaimed, "Huh?" at the same time. Seeing our reactions, Tiffany seemed to think she had managed to evade the situation successfully. She put her hands on her hips and looked smug. With just one word, "Enough," Tiffany's husband ended the call abruptly. "Hey, why did you do that? I did everything you asked me to as much as possible. Didn't it suit your taste?" Tiffany tried calling her husband from her phone, but he rejected the call and she couldn't get through. "Anyway, Tiffany, did you know that putting Sean in the reusable bag and leaving was a crime?" When I showed her the screen, Tiffany, suddenly trembling, collapsed on the spot. "Tiffany, we're done here. Goodbye." With nothing more to say, I left Tiffany behind and walked away, feeling a shiver down my spine. When I looked back, my sister-in-law had a terrifying expression, her eyes bloodshot and her eyebrows twitching. "I'll tell my brother on you. It's because of you that I moved without telling him, and now all this happened. My husband decided to move because he felt sorry for me being exploited by you. And of course, he knows everything about this incident. He won't let you near our family again." Feeling abandoned by the only ally she thought she had, my sister-in-law cried out loud on the spot. Even after all this, she didn't utter a single word about Sean. How selfish can one be? This is not the time to cry. Go and pick up Sean immediately. If I'm getting divorced, I don't need the baby. What kind of person are you? I won't forget your words. No matter what happens, I won't let Sean return to you. Having bid farewell to my irredeemable sister-in-law, I walked away with a certain determination in my heart. Later, I reported my sister-in-law abandoning the baby to the police. Though he was quickly taken into custody, her actions were deemed severe, and Tiffany faced significant interrogation by the police. My sister-in-law was served divorce papers by her husband and cut off from her own family, leaving her alone. Having been demanded $15,000 each in compensation from her husband and her affair partner's wife, Tiffany borrowed money with her affair partner to pay the compensation. However, as it turned out, the company she borrowed from was shady, and she ended up being forced to work in dimly lit places to repay the debt. My determination is to raise Sean as my own child. When I told my husband, he readily accepted. Oh, I almost forgot. I'm also blessed with a new life. I'll cherish these children and ensure they live happily.
You are thinking too much about cheating. If you were being cheated on, maybe you have a problem too? Like not being attractive enough. When I shared my worries, my sister laughed them off as if they were nothing. She then left me behind and headed towards the register. Alone, I bit my lip, unable to say anything. Rushing home with Nicole, who was pale and breathing shallowly, I was shocked upon arrival. At this time, the house, which should have been empty, had a car parked in front. It was Scott's company car. Tiptoeing in fear, I quietly opened the entrance door, only to find Scott and my sister's shoes there. Loud voices were coming from the bedroom. I hurried out of the house and headed to my parents' home. Dad, something terrible has happened to my sister. I.A. Kelly Brown will make sure they regret turning me and that father of ours into enemies. I am Kelly Brown, a housewife in my early 50s. My joys are reading, laughing, and making others laugh. I consider being cheerful my forte. Despite my quiet and plain appearance, I've been told I'm like a comedian when I talk. My family is the complete opposite of me. Unlike me, who resembles our father with small eyes and a nose. Patty is a beauty inherited from our mother and has always been glamorous. She has always ridiculed me for my looks. For instance, I'll never forget something that happened over 30 years ago. After graduating from high school, I was struggling with makeup when Patty suddenly spoke to me. Ew. You're putting on makeup? It doesn't suit you. You should just stay barefaced and blend in with the old ladies. She looked down on me without any remorse, even as I was outraged. My memories of childhood are filled with my selfish and mean sister. As we grew into our 20s, Patty became an elementary school teacher. While I was employed at a local company, she mocked even that. Well, private sector jobs have no security. I, on the other hand, am a civil servant. So my job's secure forever. Isn't that the best? Though Patty was boastful, our mother, who was also a teacher, frowned and sighed. Our father, the jokester, could turn even such situations into jokes, making us laugh. However, my heart only truly cleared up when Patty wasn't around. I fell in love 3 years into my job, at the age of 23. The man was a quiet colleague who wore glasses, named Scott. As I eagerly went on dates, I faced a barrage of sarcasm from Patty every time we met. She criticized everything from my clothes, makeup, to my taste in men. Yet, I disregarded it as usual and joyfully deepened my love with Scott. I'm getting married to Scott. I've already introduced him to Mom and Dad. You should meet him too, sometime. I announced my marriage to Scott over the phone. Then, Patty, who was still single at the time, responded in an irritated tone. Huh? Getting married before me? Unbelievable. Normally, you defer to your older sister. That's the worst. There wasn't much I could say except, I don't care. I went ahead and got married. I truly believe I was happy spending my time with Scott. Eventually, Patty got married too. It seemed like an arranged marriage, and I worried if she did it just to compete with me. Her husband, like Patty, was a teacher and seemed very earnest. Patty had children before me, and I was relieved not to receive any snide remarks then. Things were peaceful at that time. Little did I know, this peace would soon be shattered. After giving birth, I quit my job. Busy with childcare, I couldn't care less about my appearance, letting both my hair and face go. Scott began to neglect me all of a sudden. You've started to look like an old lady, he'd say and sigh as we passed each other. I wanted another child, but Scott was against the idea and wouldn't agree to it. It was a real shock, and I even considered divorce. When I consulted my friends and parents, they all listened sympathetically. On the Thanksgiving day at my parents' house, I confided in my sister, Patty, out of desperation. However, her response was less than helpful. You're lucky to have gotten married at all. If you have complaints, why don't you just divorce him now? Stop nagging. Patty said this with an air of annoyance, then fixed her makeup and went out. Left behind was my brother-in-law, looking isolated as he took care of the children. seemingly uncomfortable at his wife's family home. While realizing I couldn't get along with my sister, I was troubled by Scott's coldness. Yet, I couldn't bring myself to leave him, and time just passed. Now, nearly 30 years later, the worries of my youth have faded into the busyness of life. And I have not divorced Scott. The romantic feelings have long since ended. But I still consider us to be companions under the same roof. After our daughter, Nicole, entered middle school, I started working as a cashier, which gave me a place outside of my home. However, the store where I worked for many years is closing. The store where I work is closing, so I'll be unemployed from next month. When I mentioned this at dinner, Scott looked up, seemingly surprised. Nicole, who had been quietly eating her hamburger, swallowed and then suggested, "That's okay. You've been working hard all this time, so why not take a break? If you quit your job, we can align our weekends. Let's go on a family trip or something." I was delighted by Nicole's suggestion. Until now, it had been difficult to align our schedules because I was busy on weekends when Scott was off. But as Nicole said, it would now be easier to coordinate. Nicole works in the service industry, so despite being a full-time employee, she can choose her holidays to some extent. After dinner, as I was washing the dishes, Scott suddenly spoke to me. It was rare for us to have a conversation, except maybe while watching TV. "So, you'll be at home all the time if you're not working? Let me know if you have plans to go out." I answered casually, wondering if he was concerned about dinner. "I don't have any specific plans, but even if I do, I'll be back by the evening." Scott nodded vaguely, showing that he wanted to know despite not usually being the controlling type. I found it odd but agreed to inform him of any plans to go out. Being a full-time homemaker after so long, I found myself with free time during the day. Just as before, I tried to enjoy my hobbies, like reading more and experimenting with cooking, but I still felt a void. Moreover, the opportunity to talk to others decreased, making me feel lonely. Recently, Scott has been coming home late. When I asked, he said his workload at the company had increased. So, I decided to visit my father, who lives about 10 minutes away by car. Since my mother passed away a few years ago, my father has been living peacefully with 2 cats. He was happy to see me when I visited with homemade sweets. "By the way, Kelly, have you seen Patty recently?" While we were having a pleasant chat, my father suddenly asked. Since we don't meet except during holidays, I shook my head. Then, my father seemed puzzled and said, "Patty now works at a school just 2 stations away, so it's close, right?" I wanted to give her some of the good pickles we buy, so I asked her to stop by after work. Then she came by in quite flashy clothes. Is that how young people dress these days? I couldn't answer since I hadn't seen the clothes myself. Incidentally, I dislike pickles, but they're Patty's favorite. Something was odd. Patty's phone rang on the table, and when I went to give it to her, she snapped at me not to touch it. She also seemed to want to place her phone face down. And when I warned her that the screen could get scratched, she glared at me. It was just a small thing, but it made me feel uneasy. That's because Patty never used to be particular about how she placed her phone. With that thought nagging at me, I went home. At dinner that day, I casually mentioned it to my family. I went to my parents' house today, and it seems like Patty is acting strangely. She's dressed flashily, and she insists on placing her phone face down. I wonder what's going on. For me, it wasn't just a feeling of discomfort, but also one mixed with worry. Then, Nicole spoke up. Could Aunt Patty be cheating? I almost dropped my fork in shock. Scott choked on his soup, coughing violently. I saw somewhere that those are signs of someone cheating. There are also other signs like going out more, coming home late, and excessively checking their partner's schedule. Hearing this, I involuntarily looked at Scott. Some of the characteristics Nicole mentioned fit him perfectly. Though I thought it might be overthinking, I couldn't help but worry. Don't talk about such things outside. It's embarrassing. Scott made a grim face, perhaps noticing my gaze. The next day, I unexpectedly ran into my sister. We bumped into each other at a store near our house. "Oh, Patty? It's rare to see you here. Are you going to Dad's house?" Surprised by my sudden greeting, Patty jumped. Turning around, she wore dark lipstick and a large scarf. Her clothes were flashy, and I could understand why Dad was concerned. I had a brief chat with Patty and then remembered our conversation from the previous night. Though I couldn't directly ask her, I thought it might be okay to discuss Scott. You know, last night Nicole was talking about the characteristics of people who cheat. And well, my husband fits quite a few of them. It's surely nothing, right? I'm just feeling a bit anxious. Ignoring my sigh, Patty was choosing a drink. Then she replied lightly. "You're overthinking it. If you're being cheated on, maybe it's because you have a problem? Like not being attractive enough." I was slightly irritated by her dismissive attitude. Patty quickly ended the conversation and headed to the cashier, leaving me behind, biting my lip, unable to say anything. Several weeks later, on a Sunday, just when I had almost forgotten about our conversation on cheating, I went out to see a movie. I was headed to a new cinema a bit far away, looking forward to watching a movie in a good environment. Just as I was about to arrive, my phone suddenly rang. "Mom. I'm sorry, can you come pick me up? I feel sick." Nicole sounded in pain over the phone. I was startled. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm coming right now, wait for me." I quickly changed my destination and headed to Nicole's workplace. When I arrived, Nicole was waiting outside the building. She said she felt terribly ill due to her period, to the point of nausea. "I just want to go home. I'll go to the gynecologist later." So, I decided to head home with her. A few minutes later, as I safely arrived in front of our house, I was puzzled to see Scott's company car parked there. Scott, being in sales, might have had to stop by home for some reason during his rounds. Maybe he forgot something. He knew I would be out today, so he couldn't have asked me to receive any deliveries. Without much thought, I parked my car and entered the house with Nicole. There were women's shoes in the entrance. Not belonging to our house, these women's shoes were there, alongside Scott's. I felt a chill run through my entire body. The conversation about cheating suddenly came rushing back. I then heard strange noises coming from the bedroom. It seemed they hadn't noticed us. Leaving Nicole, who was pale not just from her condition, at the entrance. I approached the bedroom. And then, I stopped. I recognized the voices more than anyone else's. "Patty." I involuntarily murmured. Scott was in the midst of having an affair with my sister. Silently, I tiptoed back to the entrance. Leaving the unwell Nicole at the entrance, I rushed out and drove quickly to my parents' home. When I arrived at my parents' home, my father, Daniel, was just tending to the bushes in the front yard. "Dad, something terrible has happened to Patty." I pulled my father into the car. He was quite muddy from gardening, but that was the least of our concerns. As we headed home, I explained the situation to him. After hearing the story, Daniel nodded with his smartphone set to record mode. "All right, leave it to me." He brandished his latest model smartphone, bought with the ample free time of his retirement. I could guess what he was planning to do, but I didn't have the heart to stop him. "Do you want to go about this seriously, or do you want to make a mockery of it?" When asked, I immediately responded. "Make it funny at first, please." I'm definitely getting a divorce. So I want to show them to a lawyer. We might capture 2 naked bodies. So we need to neutralize the grossness. Daniel nodded firmly. Soon, we arrived at our home. Nicole was sitting outside the entrance, hugging her knees and looking down. As we approached, she looked up and said, "They're still at it. So energetic for their age. Also, sorry, I felt so sick I threw up." Nicole seemed to be in a lot of discomfort. She had come home early to rest but got caught up in this mess instead. I felt terrible for her and patted her back as I spoke. "I'm sorry, Nicole. You can go to your room if you're able to walk." When asked, Nicole slowly stood up. I carefully opened the door, trying not to make noise. And couldn't help but laugh when I noticed where Nicole had vomited. Now, it was time to storm in. Daniel and I exchanged looks and headed for the bedroom. The sounds from inside were somewhat subdued but indicated ongoing activities. "Ready, now," he whispered to me, then flung the door open all at once. The 2 on the bed screamed in shock. We were the ones who wanted to scream. What were they doing on the bed I sleep in every night? They were in the midst of intimacy, completely naked. At least they had the decency to lay down a bath towel, perhaps to avoid soiling the sheets. If they were that considerate, I wish they wouldn't have gone through with it at home. "Whoa, Daniel." Scott was the first to regain his composure. Patty, with her smeared lipstick, frantically tried to cover herself, confused by the situation. Daniel stormed into the room, beginning his act of fury. "Patty. You. What are you doing at your age, over 50, shame on you. And Scott. You betrayed Kelly, and with Patty. I won't forgive this." Despite yelling, Daniel carefully held the camera, making it clear this wasn't just a fit of rage. Daniel has always been like that. The more he is angered or shocked, the calmer he becomes, managing to turn the situation to his advantage. But Scott and Patty were too flustered to realize this. Seeing their usually fun-loving grandfather furious made them completely panic. Daniel handed me the smartphone and pressed further. "When did this start? How long have you been doing this? Shameful, both of you." Oh. He turned bright red and spat out incomprehensible words, then suddenly collapsed onto the bed. For a moment, I worried he had really fallen ill, but he had carefully chosen a clean spot to fall, indicating it was an act. I quickly played along. "Dad. This is serious. He might have burst a blood vessel from anger. He's not breathing." While pretending to panic, I kept the smartphone camera focused on Patty and Scott. Patty was fixated on Daniel, oblivious to my recording. She turned pale and blurted out, "We need to discuss the inheritance." Scott was also pale, but he seemed genuinely shocked by his sister-in-law's words. Covering his lower half with a fallen pillow, he muttered in disbelief. "Is that really what you're worried about right now?" I agreed with him. Then, Daniel sat up with a sigh, looking at Patty, who was frozen in shock. "Patty, you're really bringing me down. That's just the lowest. How did you end up like this?" The disgust was evident on Daniel's face, not as an act this time, and I couldn't help but sympathize. As Daniel got up, Patty frowned as if realizing the gravity of the situation. While recording the shameful state of Scott and Patty, I egged them on. "That's terrible, Patty. The first thing you say when your own father collapses is that. Figures, someone who'd do such things with her sister's husband would say something different." Patty turned an angry face towards me, realizing only then that she was being recorded. As she screamed, I kept the camera on her while switching with Daniel to catch Scott, who was starting to dress in a corner. "Hey, you. Don't you dare run away. Nicole is feeling sick and just got home. It's terrible to disturb her further when she's feeling nauseous enough to vomit. Hearing his daughter's name, Scott let out a small scream. Shocked to realize Nicole knew about the situation. If he regretted it being discovered, he should have thought twice before acting. The anger was palpable. Here we have two people, naked on the bed, obviously in the midst of an affair. Oh, and look at this expensive nutrition drink bottle. Seems like they were quite energized for their activity. I reported to Daniel's smartphone, playing the role of a reporter. As Patty screamed and fled the bedroom wearing only a coat, Daniel's voice followed. Did she just leave not wearing anything but a coat? When Patty reached the entrance and screamed again. Ah! What is this? I caught up to her without surprise, knowing the cause. Nicole, unfortunately, had vomited on Patty and Scott's shoes by the entrance. The women's shoes, quite elegant and seemingly expensive, were now covered in vomit. Where do you think you're going, Patty? You're not getting away. Daniel and I caught up to the stunned Patty. We then made her and Scott sit on the floor to confess their actions. I'm sorry. I apologize, truly. When did it start? Well, about 2 years ago. Scott hesitantly spoke, glancing at Patty for confirmation. Patty, with a click of her tongue, corrected him sharply. 3 years. It turns out the affair began 3 years ago, the year Patty transferred to her current school. I was irritated by Scott's vague memory and appalled by Patty's diligent correction. Both of you, apologize to Kelly and me on your knees. Daniel prompted, and they repeatedly apologized to us from the cold floor. Patty, in just a coat, and Scott, practically naked, made for a distasteful scene. I felt like vomiting myself. Of course, the recording didn't stop. I wonder if releasing this video to the public would get us in trouble? But it should serve as evidence. I nodded firmly at Daniel's words. Then, Patty started with a shaky voice, proposing a bizarre theory. You can't sue family members. I'm sure, within a family, it shouldn't be a crime. Honestly, I had no idea what she was talking about. How could she say such a serious matter within a family wouldn't constitute a crime? Upon further inquiry, it seemed Patty had misconstrued some legal nuances regarding crimes like theft among family members. Still, it was clear this case wouldn't apply. Hours later, Nicole and I sought refuge in Daniel's house. We couldn't stand to stay in the house after such an incident. Now, we needed to hurry and find a lawyer. Patty was also married, so we had to inform her husband and children. It was going to be a busy time, and I rolled up my sleeves in preparation. Being betrayed by Scott and my sister, Patty, was undoubtedly shocking. The fact that I couldn't feel any hunger even at midnight was due to my complete loss of appetite. Whenever I closed my eyes, the disgusting voices of Patty and Scott haunted me, preventing me from sleeping. However, I refused to feel defeated. Instead of sorrow or despair, anger filled my heart. A few days later, I visited my lawyer's office. Showing him the video, the lawyer watched intently, taking notes without so much as a smirk. But when Patty spouted her nonsensical theory that family members can't sue each other, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. It was an interesting revelation of what amuses a lawyer. According to the lawyer, I could claim compensation from both Scott and Patty. Divorce was certainly achievable, considering the division of marital assets and the potential for my brother-in-law to also demand compensation. Scott was likely to end up nearly penniless. I also expressed my desire to inform Patty's family and Scott's parents, my in-laws, about everything. The lawyer advised that doing so after finalizing the divorce would be best. Thus, I promptly obtained a divorce application. It was to be presented to Scott once the discussions on asset division were complete, Just a week later, my divorce from Scott was finalized. Presumably, he had no arguments left after being caught on video. And he agreed to the divorce quite readily. I was the one who filed the divorce papers, while Scott went to work as usual, likely pretending nothing had happened. After filing, I visited my in-laws in the neighboring county to formally greet them and showed them the incriminating video. My in-laws, possessing decent values, were furious with their son, Scott, and agreed that it was only right for me to claim compensation. I told them, "I truly appreciate all you've done for me up to now. Nicole has decided to continue living with me. She is your granddaughter, after all, so if you'd like, please continue to have a relationship with her. However, she has made it clear she never wants to see her father again or consider him a parent. Please understand." My in-laws sadly agreed. A few hours later, after leaving Scott's parents' house, I proceeded to a prearranged meeting. It was at Patty's home. Waiting for me were my brother-in-law, who had taken a leave of absence for this, and Patty's son, who was already married and living independently. I handed them a copy of the video and included my lawyer's business card. I plan to demand compensation from Patty as well. And of course, you, as my brother-in-law, can also claim from both Patty and Scott. My brother-in-law solemnly nodded. Then, the viewing session commenced. Patty's son excused himself midway and did not return. My brother-in-law watched the screen intently until the end, tears welling up in his eyes. Patty returned home while I was still there. It was already 6 p.m., and it had gotten completely dark outside. Seeing me, Patty nearly collapsed in shock. Noticing her son from another state and her husband, who should still be at work, she started trembling violently. "Welcome back, Patty. I'll be leaving soon. Please discuss the rest with your family. Oh, and you'll be receiving a claim for compensation from my lawyer soon. Make sure you pay it. If you don't, your workplace might also get notified, so be careful." After dropping those words, I left Patty's house. As I started my car, Patty came running out, shouting something. But I was done listening to anything Patty had to say. I gave a short honk of the horn and drove away. About 6 months later, Patty and her husband finally divorced. And she paid a significant amount of compensation. Apparently, Patty resisted the divorce vehemently, leading to a court case. My brother-in-law's lawyer was highly competent, leaving Patty defeated. After the divorce, Patty was kicked out of the house and even disowned by her son. Now, she's living a lonely life, resorting to binge eating and drinking, unable to fit into her beloved designer clothes anymore. Though she managed to pay the compensation with her job, her life has become difficult. She once visited my father but quickly fled upon realizing Nicole and I were living with him. I got a call, probably about debt consultation, Daniel said, with a hint of sadness. Despite everything, Patty is still his daughter. Speaking of what happened next, there's a story about Scott and Nicole as well. Around the same time Patty and her husband were getting divorced. One evening, while we were relaxing and watching TV, Nicole received a message on her smartphone. She frowned upon seeing it and promptly blocked the number. It appeared to be from Scott, asking for her to see him. Scott, who had never done household chores, was living in a dirty house full of dust and mold since he moved out. His message mentioned his deteriorating health and finances due to eating out too much. He said he saw me and Mom walking arm in arm, looking happy, and it shocked him. He wrote that he wanted to walk with me too. Ugh. No way. Seriously gross. I want to erase his existence from my memory. Nicole shivered in genuine disgust. While Daniel seemed to miss Patty, Nicole wanted nothing to do with Scott forever. Now, here's a story about divine retribution given by chance. This wasn't my doing, but Patty and Scott ended up facing further consequences. The story goes back to when Patty and her husband were in the midst of their divorce dispute. At that time, not only Patty and her husband but also Patty's son's family were involved in numerous family meetings. Patty's 4-year-old grandson, Ben, had been watching all of these adults in their sorry state. At 4 years old, he was practically still a baby and couldn't fully grasp the situation. As a result, Ben innocently shared with his kindergarten teacher and friends. My grandma and her sister's husband were naked in bed together. Grandpa, Dad, and great-grandpa were really mad at them. Why can't people sleep naked? Is it because they'll catch a cold? The other kids found this amusing and told their families. Shocked parents likely spread the story amongst themselves. And even the teachers probably gossiped about it. The rumor spread uncontrollably, and by the time Patty and her husband officially divorced, the story had reached Scott's workplace. Apparently, a client's son was a friend of Patty's grandson. The details are convoluted, but it shows how far-reaching personal connections can be. Essentially, Scott's affair became known at his company and among clients. Scott quickly lost his standing. Being divorced for an affair is bad enough, but with his wife's sister? Finger-pointing was inevitable. Just a month after the rumors began to spread, Scott chose early retirement due to the unbearable atmosphere, cutting off his career prospects. Nicole laughed, calling it divine punishment, when she heard about this from our in-laws. Patty faced more serious repercussions. As a school teacher, she was in the worst possible position for such scandals and quickly became the talk of the town. The rumor spread from child to adult, and even to other schools, almost instantly. After receiving complaints from parents, Patty realized her actions were known everywhere. Possibly due to feeling too uncomfortable, she requested a transfer to a school in a more remote location, hoping for a quieter life. But the news of her misconduct had already reached her new posting. In the countryside, the scandal was taken even more seriously. And Patty ended up taking a leave of absence from her much-prided teaching job. Rumors caused her friends to distance themselves. And now she fears being talked about wherever she goes. She will likely have to resign. Daniel relayed Patty's complaints after she had visited him. The influence of a rumor network is frightening. There seems to be no place for the two of them to find peace. When I first heard the story, I was worried rumors about me had spread too. However, it seems I'm just seen as a victim, perceived as a serious-looking person by others. I'm grateful my appearance has saved me. 5 years have passed since that incident. Nicole and I still live with Daniel, cherishing each other in our single lives. Daniel is still full of life. And our home feels wonderfully comfortable without Patty looking down on us. Nicole seems to have little interest in getting married. Even as she steps into her 30s, she continues to work hard, living the life of a successful single woman. I thought perhaps the sorry state of our parents had an influence, but it seems that's not the case. In today's world, there's hardly any benefit for a woman to get married. There are drawbacks, especially at work. Just changing my last name sounds like too much trouble. Well, I wouldn't mind having kids, but a husband? Not so much. Recently promoted, Nicole has become quite the figure at her workplace. There's a younger male colleague who seems to admire Nicole. But it's unclear what will happen there. My in-laws maintain a good relationship with Nicole, their granddaughter. But they no longer interact with me. Since Scott has moved in with them, they've refrained from contacting us to avoid causing any trouble. After retiring, it didn't take long for Scott to truly lose his way. Within half a year, he was nearly homeless until his parents allowed him to live with them out of pity. Now, they strictly monitor him, controlling all his finances. Scott spends his days exhausted from tough day labor jobs. Struggling with his health and the cost of his medication, I've heard through the grapevine. Recently, I've started working again. I found a part-time job at a library, surrounded by books I love. Seeing students and families borrow books and leave with smiles brings me great joy. Soon, Daniel, Nicole, and I plan to go on a trip together. Deciding where to go is already an enjoyable part of the process. I'm currently living my best life, filled with contentment. Sorry. I ended up taking your beloved person away from you. I hope you find someone new and good for you. Turns out, my soulmate wasn't you but your sister. When I received the divorce papers, my husband and sister left with their belongings. Then, I went to submit the divorce papers and completely became strangers with my husband. But this was not the end. Apparently, my ex-husband and sister had been planning to get together for a long time. And were even preparing for their wedding. And then, I received an invitation to their wedding. I was furious. After what had happened, my anger surpassed my sadness. Watch me, I will definitely get my revenge. My name is Angela, a 25-year-old office worker. I had just married Ethan. Our encounter dates back to our university days. I participated in a volunteer activity during my third year of university, where I met him. Ethan was also a third-year university student, and interestingly, we both came from high schools that were close to each other. His friends went to my high school, and conversely, my friends went to his high school, giving us a lot of common topics to talk about. This allowed us to become closer as we shared various stories. Though we attended different universities, we supported each other through job hunting and eventually both landed jobs. It was then he confessed to me, and we started dating. Our relationship continued smoothly from there. When we first started working, we were busy and hardly had time to meet. But as we got used to our jobs, we found time for each other and went on many dates. Our relationship continued smoothly. And after living together for about 2 years, he proposed to me. I believe you are my destiny. If I hadn't decided to join that volunteer activity, we wouldn't have met like this. I think it was fate that brought us together. So, I want you to stay by my side forever. Will you marry me? Yes. I'm looking forward to it. After his proposal, we decided to get married. I believe our meeting was a miracle. I was truly happy to be decided to marry the man I love. We immediately greeted each other's parents and had a meeting of both families, followed by our wedding. Many friends and colleagues attended, making it a very happy ceremony. Thus, our married life began. Living together before marriage meant not much changed, but still, everything felt fresh. Every little thing was enjoyable, and we spent every day excitedly. I believe our marriage was going very well. We found happiness in our daily lives, enjoying our days off by going out or relaxing at home, doing various fun activities. As we both worked, we shared household chores to ensure neither of us was overwhelmed. I truly thought marrying him was blissful. I looked forward to having children, building a warm family, and was hopeful for the future. However, about a year into our marriage, something concerning happened. My husband's behavior started to seem odd. One day, on a weekend, he was heading to the bathroom. At that moment, his phone rang. Your phone is ringing. Huh? Oh, I forgot. He hurried to the bathroom with his phone, looking very flustered. I found his behavior suspicious. Though I hadn't paid much attention before, from that moment, I started observing his actions. He always carried his phone with him, never leaving it aside. I can't believe my husband would ever cheat on me. Yet, there's been a lot of suspicious behavior from him lately. For example, his grooming habits. Ethan wasn't much interested in fashion before. He'd wear simple clothes, and I often chose and bought clothes for him. Recently, he started reading fashion magazines and dressing stylishly on his own. It could just be a newfound interest in fashion. But him starting to wear perfume and styling his hair with wax has been adding to my sense of unease. Have you become more conscious about your looks lately? Huh? Really? Yeah, you've been looking pretty good. That's a good thing, isn't it? A handsome husband is better, right? Well, yes, but it's just surprising how suddenly you've changed. Are you cheating or something? When I teased him like that, Ethan looked incredibly flustered. Wah. No way, right. Why would you say something so strange all of a sudden? Why are you so panicked? It's obviously a joke, isn't it? Oh, it's a joke. I'm going to take a bath. He was visibly shaken. And when going to the bath, he always took his smartphone with him. Highly suspicious. Normally, one wouldn't be so rattled. I was convinced Ethan was having an affair. Normally, this is where one might hire a detective to gather evidence. But I didn't do that. I loved Ethan too much and didn't want to see the proof. I couldn't face the reality of his infidelity. I hoped it was just my misunderstanding. Or that he would end the affair without me knowing and turn back to me alone. That's what I hoped for. But things went from bad to worse, unexpectedly. One day, I received a message from an unknown account. Who could this be? Long time no see, have you been well? I received this message but didn't recognize who it was. The account name was spelled letters as Brianna. It indicated the person's name was Brianna. This might be a scam. For some reason, I was added by an unknown account which, upon checking their page, seemed to be involved in scams or business opportunities, so I ignored it. Then, another message came from that account. Don't ignore your own sister's messages. What? I couldn't believe my eyes. Then it hit me. Indeed, I have a sister named Brianna. But we've been like cats and dogs. We've had a bad relationship since childhood, so I didn't know her contact details. Who could have given it to her? My parents? No, if it were them, they'd surely check with me first. How did you get my number? I responded like that. Then, my sister gave a shocking reply. Ethan told me about it. Huh? Ethan? Could it be Ethan you mean? Your husband, of course. What? Oh dear, did I surprise you? Or, can you not believe it? Look, it's Ethan, right? Saying so, my sister sent a photo of them together. I was speechless looking at the photo. That Ethan was undoubtedly my husband. Why is Ethan with you? I didn't even invite you to our wedding. We really didn't get along. It was all because of my sister. She had stolen my boyfriend in the past. Moreover, my sister was incredibly selfish, and our parents had a hard time with her. She failed her university entrance exams and took a gap year but didn't study at all and failed again. Then, she went to a vocational school but dropped out and became a part-timer. Seeing my sister become just a part-timer after our parents paid so much for her education, I despised her greatly. She acted as if it was natural for our parents to give her money without showing any remorse. I once criticized her for her selfish behavior. Why are you so selfish? Don't you feel sorry for using the money our parents worked so hard to earn? Our family wasn't particularly wealthy. My mother also worked part-time. And we saved so we could have good educational opportunities without luxury. Ideally, they would have liked to buy more brand name items. But they always sacrificed their desires because they had 2 children. I was very thankful to my parents. That's why I couldn't understand my sister's sense of entitlement. When I confronted her, she looked at me angrily. Huh? How dare you lecture me, Amir's sister? Thinking you can talk back to me when you're plain and ugly? You're a million years too early. This has nothing to do with looks. I'm saying you should show more respect to our parents. You're missing something important as a person. Shut up. My sister lunged at me in response. I fought back, and it escalated into a big fight. Our father had to step in to break us up, but this incident created an unbridgeable gap between us. Since then, we haven't spoken or seen each other in nearly 10 years. Of course, I didn't invite her to my wedding or the family meeting. So, I couldn't understand why my husband and sister were connected. I saw you walking with Ethan one time. So, I used some connections to meet Ethan directly. He fell for my seduction easily. But we're in love. That can't be true. It's a lie, right? What? Then why isn't Ethan home yet today? He said he had a drinking party. He's with me? That's a lie, there's no way. Well, I understand if you don't want to believe it. Unfortunately, he's at my place right now. Oh, that's right. You have tomorrow off, don't you? Ethan and I are coming over. Now that I've spilled the beans, we've decided to live together at my place. I'm coming to pick up Ethan's stuff. So, we're going to take a bath together now, talk to you later. My sister ended the conversation like that. No matter what I sent, it wasn't even read. I tried calling Ethan and sending him messages, but similarly, none were read. Nor did he answer the phone. Is he really with my sister? Could my sister be lying just to upset me? I was filled with anxiety and couldn't sleep at all that night. Then morning came. Around 9 a.m., I heard the house key. It seemed Ethan had returned. Hoping he was alone, I went to the entrance. But what I saw was Ethan and my sister, wrapped around his arm. Yoo-hoo. Just as promised, here I am. Sister. Came to pick up my stuff. Ethan said in a detached tone. So, you two really were having an affair? Even as I asked, Ethan ignored me and continued packing his things. Ethan is busy packing, so don't bother talking to him. I'll answer for you. Yes, we've been having an affair. Since when? About 6 months ago, maybe? To think their relationship started that long ago. While my sister and I were talking, Ethan seemed to have finished packing some of his things and came over. Well, sorry, Angela. But you're also to blame, right? Keeping such a wonderful sister a secret. Oh, Ethan, saying such sweet things. If I had met Brianna first, all this trouble could have been avoided. Sorry. I ended up taking your beloved person away from you. I hope you find someone new and good for you. Turns out, my soulmate wasn't you but your sister. My sister and Ethan laughed together, looking at me. Why does my sister always interfere with my life? We could just live happily without bothering each other. She must find joy in taking what's mine. Truly a sad person. Then, Ethan handed me a completed divorce form. After I took the divorce papers, Ethan and my sister left with their belongings. Left alone, I was filled with sadness. I packed my things, got into the car, and returned to my parents' house. I couldn't stand being in that house alone. When I arrived home, my parents were shocked to see me. Of course, it was unexpected for their daughter to return suddenly with all her belongings. The moment I saw my parents, I couldn't hold back any longer and burst into tears. Angela, what happened? What's going on? My crying surprised my parents even more. After my mother made me some coffee, and I took a sip, I felt a bit calmer. I explained to my parents why I came back with big luggage and why I was crying so much. As I spoke, my parents' expressions darkened more and more. I can't believe Brianna and Ethan would. Absolutely unforgivable. Angela, you must have been so hurt. My mother came to me and gently hugged me. Feeling her warmth, I found some solace and cried again. Knowing about my sister and husband's affair, I felt disillusioned with Ethan. I thought to myself that I would be the one to discard such a person. My feelings of love seemed to vanish all at once. Yet, distancing myself like this made me realize how deeply I had loved him. If my sister wanted to inflict a wound on my heart, she succeeded. I was depressed and struggled to recover for a while. Despite not wanting to see them, my sister kept sending photos. It seemed they were on a trip. She deliberately sent me pictures of them together. What is that? She's really hopeless. My mother was furious when I showed her the messages. Don't worry about such messages. You should just block her. Hearing my mother's suggestion, I considered blocking her. However, my father stopped me. They're leaving us a lot of evidence of their affair. Don't block them, keep everything. Knowing her, she'll probably send more. That makes sense. Just turn off the notifications. If you see any messages or photos, tell your mother or me. Okay, I understand. My usually gentle and kind father said this with a serious face. It was clear he was very angry with my sister. After that, I went to submit the divorce papers, becoming completely estranged from Ethan. But that wasn't the end. Apparently, my ex-husband and sister had been planning to be together for a long time and were even preparing for their wedding. Then, I received an invitation to their wedding. They were completely mocking me. I was furious. My anger surpassed my sadness. Just you wait, I'll definitely get my revenge. At that moment, after seeing the invitation, my parents said this. Angela, you don't have to attend the ceremony. Huh? Your mother and I will go. We'll show them hell on your behalf. My parents told me to leave everything to them. There was no need for me to go. On that day, I went to the venue with my parents. I didn't enter, but I wanted to see what would happen. When my parents arrived, my sister came out looking surprised. Huh, why are mom and dad here? I sent the invitation to Angela. I hid and listened to the conversation between my parents and my sister. Angela couldn't make it. More importantly, it's cold not to invite your parents to your wedding. Yes, it's our daughter's big day, after all. Hearing this, my sister seemed puzzled. She probably expected them to be angry. Did mom and dad come to celebrate? Yes, of course. So, can we come in? Sorry, I was just a bit embarrassed. Of course, you can come in. My sister was successfully tricked and let my parents into the wedding venue. I made sure to leave the venue temporarily to avoid being seen by my sister or ex-husband. Later, during the reception, I entered the venue boldly with the invitation. As the reception began, my father managed to speak to the MC and got the microphone. My sister and ex-husband looked on in surprise. Standing in front of everyone, my father started to speak. Today, we actually have a surprise for my daughter. At the word surprise, my sister and ex-husband exchanged glances. Let's call it a special guest, if you will. Please, come in. With that, my father pointed to the entrance, and several men entered. My sister was speechless upon seeing them. My father invited the men onto the stage and began to explain. Brianna sits here today as Ethan's fiancée. But my daughter has been seeing several other men as well. These are the men. The venue buzzed with whispers at my father's words. Wait, What are you saying, Dad? Stop it. My sister tried to stop him, but my father was unshaken. These men have been in a relationship with Brianna and were unaware of her affair. The reason I know about Brianna's relationships is because of a complicated situation. The man sitting next to her, Ethan, was my youngest daughter's ex-husband. The reason for their divorce was Brianna's advances towards him, leading to an affair. The venue buzzed even louder. My sister and ex-husband were speechless. I cannot forgive Brianna and Ethan for betraying my daughter. So I came to this wedding to administer punishment. By the way, the people sitting with Ethan as relatives are actors. I've met his parents at my daughter's wedding, and the people sitting here are not them. Because of the affair, Ethan has been disowned by his in-laws. Well, it's only natural for committing adultery. I don't wish to celebrate these two. The men on this stage are also angry. Can you all genuinely congratulate them? As my father spoke, attendees began to stand up and leave the venue. Wait. Everyone, please. Despite my sister's calls, no one looked back, and everyone left. My ex-husband was pale and frozen in shock. And a different ordeal awaited my sister. It involved the other men she had been cheating with. They were unaware of her affairs. Therefore, they approached her with angry faces. My sister was in tears, terrified. I approached her. Angela, you were here? This was quite an entertaining wedding. I got to see something really good. Sister, you look really pathetic today. The most pathetic in your life, isn't it? Well, you got what you deserved. Hopefully, you'll learn to live a decent life now. Though I doubt you're capable of that. I left the venue after saying that. My ex-husband tried to speak to me, but I completely ignored him. My parents and I left the venue, feeling refreshed. Following this event, my sister and ex-husband lost all their friends. And my ex-husband also lost his credibility at work. He had prospects for promotion, but now that path is completely closed. He's been treated coldly by everyone and gradually received less work. He's been relegated to a dead-end department, making him a corporate outcast. Consequently, his salary decreased, and my sister had to work to make ends meet. Given my sister's spending habits and my ex-husband's low salary, their marriage soon ended in divorce. However, having been disowned by our parents, my sister has no place to return and is now living a poor life alone, working part-time. Meanwhile, I've been focusing on my work while living with my parents, feeling surprisingly liberated after getting revenge on my sister and ex-husband. For now, I'm not interested in romance. I plan to make memories with my family by traveling together and working hard.